Hey everyone, Sean here from Unicorn Ventures, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today's guest is one of the few leaders in Australia who can walk into a chaotic business, a distressed balance sheet, an overwhelmed founder team, and not only see the path forward, but build it brick by brick. Brett Schwarz is a rare breed, a chartered accountant turned founder, CFO, CEO, board director, capital strategist, and scale-up architect. He's raised more than $75 million, guided companies through IPOs, transformed loss-making operations into profitable engines, and played a pivotal role in scaling Canatrek from $77,000 to $90 million in revenue. Brett doesn't just turn around the numbers, he rebuilds organizations from the inside out. Systems, culture, governance, capital, strategy. He sees the whole picture, and he spent 3 decades proving that sustainable growth isn't magic. It's actually a method. And today he's opening up the playbook for us. So if you're a founder, a business owner, or an executive who's fighting to scale, raise capital, or get control of your business, this episode may be the most important one for you to listen to. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sean. What an intro. Wow.
I sometimes get that from our guests and they say, wow, that sounds awesome and I got a lot to live up to. But the fact is you've done these things. So congratulations to you. And I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Appreciate this opportunity.
Now, I read that list, but I'm going to share something with the audience. When we first reached out, and I reached out to a lot of people, and you came into my world and you said, look, I'm not on the speaking tour. I don't have a book, but I really love what you're doing. And I think I have a story. And I went, yeah. And I looked at it and I went, yeah, you got a story. And so I'm so honored to have you on board. You began as a chartered accountant before becoming a founder and later on executive across multiple industries. And I want to explore that with our audience today, all the different industries and all the different sizes. But what early experience shaped the leader you have eventually become?
I actually have to go even further back to like my professional career because I think one of the key things that shaped me was when I grew up. We had a family business, a very successful family business that was called East Coast Jeans, which back in the 70s and 80s was Australia's largest retailer and manufacturer of clothing, and obviously jeans and other. And I was surrounded by that. You know, I saw what dad did, I saw what my grandfather did, my sister got involved in the business. So I think as a young child, and I used to love going into the stores. I used to love jumping into a delivery van. As I got older, I worked in the computing department and the accounting department and stuff like that. So I think that really shaped me. I've got business running through my veins, and I think that kind of set me up for what I've subsequently done. So that's the formative side of things.
Well, that's awesome. First of all, can I ask, 70s and 80s, do you have any of those jeans left? Because they're coming back in trend and they're worth a mint.
Unfortunately not. I have jumped onto the web to kind of look, and there are some photos of some of the jeans and the flare jeans and stuff like that. But yeah, we sold the business in the late 80s, and I've got some historical paraphernalia that I have found through my late father. But yeah, as you said, some of that fashion has definitely come back.
So what happened beyond there? So you're in the family business and then you ventured out for yourself?
Yeah, I think again, rolling forward, I was fortunate enough to be put through, private schooling, and that gave me also a great foundation. I did a Bachelor of Commerce at the University of Melbourne, and was really fortunate enough to be picked up by, at the time, the number one of the big 6 accounting firms, Arthur Andersen, that some people may recall. They fell over after I left, not because I left.
Just got to make that very clear.
That's right. Well, I missed the shredding course that they gave a few years after I was there. But I was just fortunate enough to be working with one of the big accounting firms, and the experience and exposure that I got, and the numerous industries that I was involved in that, I would never have otherwise been exposed to, and the projects I did. I think that really solidified my skill sets. And as I kind of say to people, it helped me build my toolkit of things that I'd learned, or heard of. I was just fortunate enough. So I think it was 4.5 years at Arthur Andersen, and moved up through the ranks as you do in the accounting game. And then I was fortunate enough for another 4 years to work with another accounting firm that was a much smaller firm, but a boutique firm that eventually got picked up by Deloitte because they were a great firm. I was there for 4 years. They were after people from the big, the big chartered firms, and I kind of came with the skills and the toolkit. Headed up their audit and consulting division. And again, I was just exposed to not only historical stuff, I was really fortunate to do like an ISO 9000 accreditation, a business planning and big strategic review, and rolled my sleeves up. And I'm a roll your sleeves up type of guy. And yeah, so the 8.5 years in chartered accounting, I think, really gave me that foundation. So for any young person that I get introduced to, whether it's family, friend, or other, I really try and say, try to get exposure to whether it's one of the big firms, the medium firms, even small firms, but try and get some industry experience. You may stay in it, whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, or other, but it really will just give you that foundation. And I know for myself, it definitely did. So I'm, thankful for those 8.5 years that I was in chartered accounting, which then set me up for going out into what I call the real world.
We've had a few guests that have come back from that kind of background. David Kenny, Jordan Green, AM, Jordan Green and Andrew Nash.
Yes.
So they've shared their stories. What was it like for you to be sitting in the room and I guess go from the transition of being having the accounting background and being able to analyze a spreadsheet, but then shifting it to, hold on, I can not only just analyze them, but I have the ability to transform and build a business. Now, tell me about that experience for yourself.
It is a transition. It can be very scary because a lot of times you are on your own, depending on how big your team is and your service providers around you. So I think my first foray was I actually took on a consulting CFO role for a client of ours that I'd actually been involved in the due diligence program. But then I don't want to say it's not my claim to fame, but my time at the company, the tech company that I co-founded, which is called Blue Chip, literally started from an idea. And that started actually with my dear father-in-law, who is still my father-in-law, which is very important.
Wow. Okay, so you survived that.
I
That's
survived that. But my wife and I, we were, 30-year-old risk-taking entrepreneurs. And we approached my dear father-in-law, who was a conservative scientist engineer, and a lot older and kind of on the verge of retirement and stuff like that. But we were able to do something, but again, it was uncharted territory. It was tech, which for me was new. So I was learning about technology development and IP patents, and we actually went to a 4-week patent course run by one of the leading patent attorney firms, Phillips Orman Fitzpatrick, that I found fascinating. I was learning. I love learning, and
mm,
we learned about that. And with my father-in-law, we then, started building the business, step by step. We raised the first capital in 2005. We put on a CEO that the lead investor introduced to us.
all right.
And
So let's pause there. Okay, so
sure,
you had an idea. Your father-in-law comes from a conservative, I guess, strategic, process-driven background. You're this 30-year-old something.
academia,
Well, what's that?
academia, which is even, I don't want to say worse.
Yeah, right. And you're this 30-year-old, let's take on the world. And
Yeah.
you've got the consultancy background, or at least that's enough to bring your parts
Yes.
to the table. Now, I could see the combination. You got this technical, and you're both learning about, the structure around technology and how to build that. So I imagine that's how you built your consultancy firm.
This was actually the company itself. We set up actually a technology consultancy, but what was fortuitous, and again, you look back and say, it was meant to happen. My father-in-law was at a community event, sat next to someone who was a producer of chickens, but they exported chickens overseas to Asia, and they were having a major issue with spoilage.
Right.
And I say this in the most polite way, and now it's definitely going to be public because it's on record, but you need mad scientists in the world to come up with ideas. And my father-in-law went away and did some numbers and pictures and graphs and whatever scientists and engineers do. And he came up with an idea of a novel way that we could firstly sense temperature of a frozen chicken and whether it had gone outside of an agreed range. But then he realized very quickly that this can also be used as a memory device and in the sense of something that has a unique identification. So the modern terminology is RFID technology, radio frequency identification, where something has a unique number. Now, that can be your access pass into a building, that can be anything. With this same device that my father-in-law developed. So I was the beneficiary of this wonderful idea. And we started off, as I kind of said, in the food game for frozen chickens. But within a short period of time, we ended up again in an industry that I hadn't had any experience in healthcare. And my world became IVF clinics and talking about embryos, stem cell therapies that, are worth $10,000, $20,000 a pop. So you don't want to mislabel that, lose that, leave that out of the freezer too long. Clinical research organizations that are doing a clinical trial, an industry that, again, I knew nothing about, but was willing to learn, was willing to listen. But I was able to apply my accounting skills. I remember going into some of these facilities that were managing millions of samples. Now, I'd done that from a stock take perspective. I could understand, okay, how are you trying to make sure that we're counting all the stock and it's not moving? Same thing. And we just listened. And so it was, again, just an amazing progress of applying those core skills that I had and learning along the way and surrounding myself by experts, whether it's a patent attorney or an engineer or engineers plural. That's, I think, part of anyone's journey. As long as you're willing to work within a team, that's what makes success.
I think for most founders or business owners, they tend to stay in their own lane, this similar lane. You've swapped many lanes. And I guess what I'm hearing is one, that takes a great deal of confidence, but it makes it a little bit easier if you have the right people around you.
Totally. It's all about the team. Again, I I've been part of successful organizations, but it's only because of the team and having a united team that works together, is willing to, know what their strengths, but also their weaknesses are. Yes, very, very much the team.
So with the business that you started with your father-in-law, you
Mm.
mentioned you brought on a CEO. Why? Most founders would go or business owners go, I've got this. Like
Yeah,
walk me
it
through.
was a precondition of the investment. These guys were leading the first round that we did,
Mhm.
and he was a an engineer by trade who'd actually been in Silicon Valley, had been in the commercial world, so he's actually a commercially minded engineer. So he was able to talk both languages. And he was with us for the first year and a half, 2 years of the business. And, I think that was what was right for the business. It didn't pan out in the end. There were some personality clashes along the way, and
It
that
happens.
happens.
Yeah.
And I ended up assuming the CEO role. So again, here was I, this, young person still learning my way, but I ended up taking the reins and yeah, it was an amazing opportunity that I grabbed, and but again, didn't do it with arrogance. I said, okay, if I've got to learn, things along the way, I will. One of the things that I've learned along that pathway is the relationship of a CEO down with his team is absolutely critical, and especially your C-suite, your senior executive team, because that's who you trust, that's who's got your back. But not only a relationship of a CEO with a board, but one of the strongest relationships that I've always felt is the relationship of a CEO with the chairman of the board. Because
Hmm.
the chairman is someone that, in that company, blue chip, I would meet the chairman very regularly and we just talk. And this was back in the days where you used to sign a payment requisition and sign checks. That actually gave you time to be able to talk. And you'd meet in a coffee shop and I'd come with a pile of stuff to sign, but we'd talk. And I think that relationship was very important. So, yeah, transitioning from a chartered accountant to being a founder with my father-in-law, having an independent CEO to then assuming a CEO role. Yeah, a lot in a short period of time. But again, I think, as I kind of said right up front, I've had business running through my veins. So it wasn't it wasn't a known skill set, but it was there. There was something there.
There was something there. Some of our audience are solo entrepreneurs and startups and,
Mhm.
or business owners that have an idea that they just want to explore. So I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about this point of you took on investment. First of all, what was the investment for? And two, the board and forming the board. I'd like to understand, uh,
Okay.
the chairman of the board, how that person's decided. Was that part of the investment conditions? Did you already have that in place?
Mm.
And yeah, because I've seen a few businesses where that board structure, if not done right, it was one of waste of everybody's money and time and energy and focus.
Yeah.
But also that relationship, as you talked about, that CEO is really, you sometimes think the CEO is in charge, but it's actually the board, or is it vice
Oh,
versa? Is it
yep.
together? So I know I'm throwing a couple questions there
That's
for
all
you.
right. No, I've written them down.
Okay, good.
What was the initial and subsequent money for? Uh, Predominantly engineering and R&D development, because we were coming up with something very new and novel. We built a team of engineers here in Australia that were around developing the chip, were developing the reader for that chip, and developing the software. And some of this skill set, it's quite rare in Australia. The area of expertise that my father-in-law has is what's called MEMS, or microtechnology. So we hear the buzzword of nanotechnology.
Yeah.
Microtechnology is in every phone. It's the accelerometer. It's the pressure sensor for the airbag in your car. It's in your phone that makes it go from portrait to landscape. We have microtechnology devices, and that was my father-in-law's expertise. So he had engineers at his laboratory and that he taught, and PhD students when he was in academia. So we built that team, but we also used a $1 billion listed company over in Italy that was actually the manufacturer of that chip. We
Hmm.
used a publicly listed company on the NASDAQ with their facility in Malaysia. So those things don't come cheaply. Both engineers, skilled engineers, people with PhDs, and obviously the contract manufacturers. So percentage wise, yeah, 50, 60, 70% of it at least on the engineering development, which Australia is just such a wonderful place because we do have great programs like the R&D tax incentive that people around the world kind of their jaws drop when we talk about how beneficial it can be. But we do have some programs, and I've been through state and federal programs, and they've gone through 3 or 4 different names over the course of every year. It used to be called Comet, then it was Commercialization Australia, and all those things. They've gone through the different phases, and people like Jordan Green, who you mentioned, you've interviewed. Jordan's seen that himself, and I know him. So it is a great environment to develop. What they always say, unfortunately, is Australians kind of do all the hard work and then it goes overseas. Um,
It's very clever to use people that are already existing in businesses and have the resources and tapping into them as opposed to trying to rebuild everything from scratch
yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's money spent and 50, 60% of the raise went to that, but think of you would have needed 100 times more if you.
Absolutely. We don't have those facilities here in Australia. So I was fortunate enough. We were based in a facility here in Melbourne that was a micro and nano and bio facility, co-facility, which had laboratories that we could use. So very advantageous. But yeah, so predominantly on the technology. But then obviously, as we started engaging with the commercial market, we put on some salespeople both domestically and abroad. We also, you had to go to trade shows. And, the first time you go to a trade show, you'd go as a participant and you'd learn. The next year you go and you take a table, and literally it's a table, and you put a white tablecloth down and put some of your widgets down on the table and a couple of brochures. and then the next year you've got a banner behind you, and it gets more sophisticated. But these things cost, and obviously, whether you've got one, two, or three team members going, you've got airfares, you've got accommodation, you've got the collateral that you've got to take with you, even taking some of that equipment through customs and stuff like that. Like the customs guys are saying, what's this? What's this electronic device you've got? It could be a bomb. And I was, like, it's a reader, it scans what we're doing, and they're kind of looking and turning it upside down. That was fun. But yeah, so definitely part of it on the commercial side of things as we built the team. Your second question on the board,
Mm,
again, it was evolutionary. Initially, it was my father-in-law and myself.
yeah.
Then we put on two people, someone that he knew that was a very senior person previously at CSIRO, who also had expertise in this area of technology and commercialization, and another gentleman who kind of came out of the legal area and IP. So we had four people
And you
initially.
brought them on as advisors support to help you understand what you didn't know or introductions.
I think as we knew we were starting to raise capital and we saw what was required of us and from us, we needed to be more well-rounded than don't say a father-in-law and a son-in-law. It needed to be given a
Gravitas.
professional flavor, and to know that there was a sense of independence. But then that organization that was the lead investor, they had a seat on the board where they had another person who came from a commercial background, and we peaked, I think, at I can't remember what year it was, but we peaked with seven board members, which was too many. But I've learned now all about, skills matrices and, revolving the roles and stuff like that. And even whether it's the chairman. So it is an evolutionary thing. I think the makeup of your board for the phase that your business is in. That's
Yeah,
a
I'm really glad you said that because some people think, oh, you're married to the board for life, but the actual it's about having the board of directors is about having a team on the bench strength that can help you guide, open up doors, and show you different ways of doing it based off their experiences, leveraging the experiences of others. Is now for some people, they might be wondering, with the deals with boards. Sorry, I'm just diving into this
okay.
one, but
No, great. Good on you.
it's not something I've talked about with any other guests, and you've got extensive experience with boards.
Mm.
Are board members typically shareholders? Do they just receive an annual monthly payment? Like, what's in it for them, and how does that work? What's the different
Again,
structures?
it varies at the stage that you are, both as a private company that then becomes an unlisted public company, and in being an investor and a major investor, in one sense, it doesn't buy you a board seat. However, if it's if it's a single private individual, it rarely buys you a seat, but it can if you come from the right pedigree and background, which in our case was one of the cases. But in my most recent corporation that I've been involved in, that we'll talk about later, we brought on a private equity investor, and as part of that arrangement was if they had X% or more of the total shareholding, they had the right to appoint a board member, and in some cases you can have what's called a board observer. So someone that sits there doesn't necessarily contribute, but they're there. They are definitely present at each of those meetings. So again, I think it depends on whether you're a private company, and I don't want to say private meaning more family and intimate. When you all of a sudden start taking other people's money and external money, you go up another level. Obviously, being in the public arena, that's next level.
Yeah.
And when you're private, no one gets paid anything, but they may actually get some shares in the business or some
Equity.
options. Then you start slow, and you might be, paying a minimal annual director's fee, and it gets paid every month. Obviously, you look at some of the public companies, and again, it depends. If your market cap's 10 million, the director's fees are a lot less than if you're a $10 billion or $100 billion company. And it's probably charted and put on a graph. It's all about risk. If the company and the board were to have action taken against them, what exposure do they have? So you are given directors' fees, you're paid cash in directors' fees and or shares/options. And it depends, if you're a startup, you can't afford it. So you do generally give equity.
I think that you brought up something really interesting. A lot of people might think, "Oh, I just want to be on a board. I want to be in the room and make
Hmm.
some of those decisions." But you just touched on something that, as a director, you can be liable for decisions that are made even after you've left them. I think it's less than like 4 years or something.
Yeah. No, there is a time frame, and again, yes, companies have to have directors and officers liability insurance, which covers you to a point. But as long as you haven't been involved in anything where it's fraudulent or negligent, you're
Criminal,
you're
yeah.
you're technically protected, but it is an exposure. And so yeah, as a board member, I don't think it's something that you can just take passively and not take seriously. I think you don't just read them the night before or the week before and turn up to the meeting and don't say anything. I think it's very important that you are a participant, both from a value adding perspective, but also your risk exposure is protected. You're covering yourself and you're asking questions, whether they're financial or non-financial, but everything's been done above books, and because you're not involved in the business 24/7.
So I wanted to ask, when looking for additional funding, for the market research and development and putting on an operations team, is
Mhm.
is there a reason why you went in the direction you did, or you did not consider grants, or did you use grants to a certain level? Walk me through that.
Again, the different stages of the business, you've really got to have your fingers on the pulse. You can do it yourself, but it's very time consuming and can be complex. Eventually, I think we kind of grew to starting to use some of the accounting firms that we were using because they've got the expertise, they know the language, they know the words that you have to use. So grants are wonderful, and you've got to just make that as part of your language throughout an entire period of time. We at Blue Chip, in this case, took the typical pathway. It was family, friends, and associates for the first round, and then it progressed. And yeah, you start then being able to go to the broader market, and you get introductions. And yeah, we raised our first capital at the end of 2005. One of the stories I suppose I've got is we thought that we'd exhausted the private market
Yeah,
and that we had to consider doing an IPO. We started getting everything ready for an IPO, but then this wonderful thing called the GFC hit in late 2008, early 2009, and it hit a lot of businesses. And we had to, in order to survive, you've just got to, dust yourself off and pull in the belt and say, guys, we're not going to do an IPO or another major funding thing for whatever period of time it is. No one knew how long this thing was going to last. But yeah, you've just got to, it's a matter of survival. And so it's a matter of getting support from obviously your existing shareholders. It's counting every cent and dollar. And as they say in today's day and age, every paperclip type of stuff and pencil that you buy. Um, and we did that. And eventually we did do an IPO in 2011, which in itself, again, first time I've ever done it. And our chairman had been through it with a couple of public companies before, but it was, not for the faint at heart. But subsequent to that, then being a public listed company, it was easier to raise capital in one sense because there was a sense of liquidity, but we were a micro cap. I can't remember what our market cap got to 20 or $30 million. It was never, screaming, and we weren't highly traded.
yeah.
But it put us into another level of being able to raise capital. And then it meant that you could start talking to the more boutique micro cap funds. And the brokers are going to maybe give you a bit more time and maybe pick the phone up and maybe take a meeting.
So it's a popularity contest based on your size, really.
Yeah, I suppose. Yep, because at the end of the day, for these people, especially the brokers, it's just about fees for them, and
Yeah.
they want to get it through. Now, there are some absolutely wonderful brokers, and I've got relationships with people that I literally met back in the late 2009 and 2011 when we did the IPO and since. But yeah, they're part of the ecosystem. So there's private equity firms, which again, in my last venture, we were able to finally tap into. There are those boutique funds that are, managing 100, 200 million, that have investments in, whatever it is, 10, 15, 20 types of investments, and occasionally a private unlisted company within that. So they all have their own different, obviously, things that they shoot for, their timeframes. Private equity is generally, a 3 or 5 year play. With some of these funds, they're what they call it, a closed-end fund. They've got
Mhm.
10 years. So if you speak to them in year 8, they're expecting something in the next 2 years. Otherwise, they just won't invest.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's horses for courses. But again, I have had the fortune that we've been able to attract a lot of private investors, high net worth individuals, and individuals that they themselves may put in a good amount of money, but they also then call upon their friends who, each put in a certain amount. And I just that I don't want to say, I've always enjoyed that, because you build a rapport with them. They're real people. They're business operators themselves,
Yeah.
and you
And they're
want to.
using their own money, which they've spent years accumulating themselves. So,
Absolutely. And I mentioned the word before. One of my mantras in life is, I've known from the first cent that I ever raised, I am using other people's money. So you do not waste it. You do not ever want them thinking, why did they go on that? Or why did I see a photo of them doing this? That's such a waste of my money. That's the worst thing you could ever do. So you just, and obviously being a, financial person, the CFO, it helps, because you are the exchequer, or whatever they call it. You are controlling the books and how money is spent. But sometimes you query, oh my God, why did those engineers spend that? Or why did we take that gold sponsorship of that conference, where last year I thought we queried any, benefit of it, and we weren't going to go to it, and then all of a sudden you see a request for it. So all different types of investors.
yeah. I remember my wife and I, we started a luxury gift company. And it was beautiful boxes, and we sourced these. They're very themed around a lifestyle brand and different parts of your life. Like we had a baby one, a
Wow.
guy's lifestyle one, a Christmas one, and all
Yeah.
these sort of things. And we
Yep.
built our database of all our corporate, relationships in Sydney, and then the GFC hit, and we had all these boxes just about to hit market, and it was like,
Oh.
not, we're done.
Yep.
It was done overnight.
Yep.
Nobody saw it coming. It
No.
wasn't a fault,
No.
but the
Didn't like
hospitals
that
got
one
a lot
coming.
of donations that year.
Oh, well, you learn through it, and the next venture you think all of a sudden about stock and all
Yeah.
those
And
things
we're
that go with it.
bootstrapping it, and it's totally fine. It did not ruin us. It was,
Yeah.
something we're able to recoup over the
Yeah, well done. That's a good,
next year.
that's a
But
good lesson.
it was a learning, I
Yeah,
guess.
absolutely. We don't.
Um, you've co-founded the deep tech company. You've grown scale ups. You've run turnarounds. Is there
Hmm.
consistent patterns that you see in businesses that successfully scale?
I think what you mentioned before, teams,
Yeah.
without a good team, that if it's not working, you've got no chance. So one of the businesses that I was involved in, that was one of the two turnarounds that I did, I think it went through a troublesome financial period, where all of a sudden no one was working together, and there was like the purchasing people just stayed in the area, and the quality people were over there, and the sales people, they weren't working as a unit, and my job was to bring everyone back together, and we did. And with some blood, sweat, and tears, over a 12-month period, we turned a business that was literally a bit on the verge of going into liquidation. And finally, when I got the chance to see the financials and kind of say, whoa, okay, we got a big problem, but let's work with it, and worked with the bank and major bank, one of the tier one banks,
Yeah.
and the management. We were able to manage through that, but I think it was the team. So again, I've learned that continuously, whether it was the team of engineers that I had at Blue Chip, whether it was the team of, there were 70 odd people, 77 people at this business that was a flooring business that I was involved in. It's all about the team, and the same thing with the medicinal cannabis business that we'll get to. But I was, I think, the sixth person involved in the business, and we were, in a small office in, St Kilda down the road from where I live. It was very young and raw, and we grew and grew. And by the time I finished there a year ago, we had 140 people across all departments, from legal to marketing to sales to fulfillment and supply chain. But without those people, you couldn't scale up. So, but if you're not working together and you're not singing from the same hymn book and you're not feeling part of something, it can very easily fall over.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about kind of Trek, because it was a $77,000 business, and I remember when I talked to you about that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you grew it. When I say you, I know
Hmm.
what you're going to say. I know there's a team,
Biting
and
my
it's not
tongue.
just you, but it achieved $90 million in revenue from 77,000. I mean, first of all, I love what you said about the role of a CFO when something happens. What's your benefit?
Not my benefit.
Yeah, you get to report on it.
Oh, that's right. Well, again, I had the fortune, especially at the growth that we experienced at Canatrek, that, I get the chance to report the great results of the team.
Yeah.
And yes, I have to be judicious and make sure that, we're maintaining profitability levels and margins and not overspending. But I did have that joy to be able to report, when you're able to report, daily averages or monthly averages. And yeah, it was an absolute joy. So to be part of such a fast-paced growth company in a very, very short period of time,
Mm.
I say to a lot of people, growth is a wonderful thing, but it can literally bring your business down, because you may not be able to cope, whether it's the people, because you've got a lot of people, and how do you manage that? Our main thing that I think that we were fortunate to do, because sales grew so progressively, we were able to keep up with that sales growth because we had very good financials and we had cash that allowed us to buy more stock or produce more products to meet those sales. So it was it was, what do they call the thingo chain that just keeps on going, the wheel?
Continuous loop. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really allowed us to have that growth, where I know when I look at a lot of other companies and I look at their Appendix 4Cs and look at how much cash they have in their bank, you can see in one sense why they're struggling to grow, because they're literally down to their last few $100s, and it's scary for them. So we were very fortunate at Canatrek with that growth. Um, some of it is luck. It was just right
So
place, right time.
So tell people, our audience, what Kenetrek is, because when
Yeah.
we started talking, that's the one that grabbed my attention for no reason. It's just interesting, people. No judgment, please. But
Well, it is. And again, I think something to put out there is, I would never thought I'd be, here talking as passionately and as comfortably about medicinal cannabis. I'm 55 years old. I've never done tobacco. I've never done any drugs of any form. And here am I, my kids jokingly say, Dad, the drug lord. But I'm proud of it, because I was involved in an industry which, like, they only changed the legislation to legalize medicinal cannabis. And again, I try to ensure that we're not using the word marijuana, because that just portrays, I think of Animal House and, frat parties and Bob Marley and
yeah.
dreadlocks and stuff like that. Cannabis, firstly, but medicinal cannabis. And so 2016 was legislation. 2017 was when they started providing licenses to people that applied.
So what's the difference between medicinal cannabis and just your everyday weed, out there that
So medicinal cannabis is grown from a regulated facility with all the controls that a high-level pharmaceutical company would have. both from security perspective, but the fact that you have to literally produce product that gets sent off to a laboratory to say that there are no chemicals in here, no growth hormones. What you're buying is exactly this. So, all the labeling requirements. Um, Recreational cannabis is everything from, someone growing it in their garage or in their, upstairs loft, through to people that just don't want to go through those regulatory barriers. And I think the issue, if you put them side by side, is when you buy medicinal cannabis, you are 99.99% certain what it says it is what you're getting.
Hmm.
With recreational that you get from the guy at the pub, the person at the park, your friend who gives you a baggie or whatever they call them, you have no idea what it is. They may say it's X, but it's Y. You have no idea that there is not a harmful chemical in there. It hasn't gone through laboratory testing. So now, obviously, if you're giving it to your child for epilepsy, you're giving it to your parent who has Parkinson's disease, you're taking it for chronic pain, you want quality product. You're not doing it just to have a good night.
Yeah. Three things I want to say. One, for someone who's never done drugs, you seem to know a lot about it.
Oh God, am I in trouble?
Two, if this is a movie, about your life, I
Yeah.
would just cut the scene where you're back in through the customs officer going, no, 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 I was a bomb last time. This is
Medicinal.
cannabis, and having that conversation. That would be hilarious. And I can't remember the third one.
Okay. I look forward to seeing the movie.
Um,
So Canatrek as a business was fortunate to be started by a wonderful person. I'm going to say his name, Tommy Huppert. Tommy was just right place, right time. He was overseas at the time, and he had a family member where it was prescribed, and it significantly benefited him and his family member. And he said, "I wonder what's happening in Australia." And he started doing research and saw that there was talk of changing the legislation and maybe giving licenses to people to whether it's grow it and produce it, whether it's to dispense it, whether it's to import it. And Tommy said, I want to be part of this. I think this has got something big. And he was in the right place at the right time. He was overseas and met some of the lead, the godfather of THC and some of the leading producers, and saw facilities that he then said, okay, I'm going to come back to Australia and I'm going to replicate this.
who is leading that? Like whereabouts overseas? America or Europe, Canada?
Um, from commercial perspectives, Canada and America,
Yeah.
and they started way earlier than Australia. Like Canada was medicinal and now is medicinal and recreational throughout the entire part of Canada. America is a very unique beast. Medicinal is available, but there's only 38 states, I think, that you can get it from a recreational perspective, where you can walk in off the street into a dispensary, and some of them look like an Apple store, but it's regulated, but nowhere like the medicinal type of products.
Yeah.
So Canada and America have definitely led it. Countries like Israel have led the R&D side of things. Other countries have got involved. South Africa has now become a producer. Thailand has become a producer. Spain, which was not going to do anything, all of a sudden in, I think, 2026, it's finally opened up. So, but the most important thing here again is, if we've got to keep using the word medicinal. This is for
Yeah.
people with chronic pain, with sleep, anxiety, that traditional medicines haven't worked and or haven't been effective. And originally, medicinal cannabis was seen as kind of a last resort medicine. There are some people that unfortunately it's become a first course of thing, and people are just happy to write the script out. That's what's got to change here in Australia. But it was very early on, 2017. I think the first sale that Canatrek had was end of 2018. And Tommy just wanted to be part of it. And his view was to go against the trend that a lot of corporate people say, don't have a vertically integrated business. Be good at something. Don't try and do everything.
Hmm.
Tommy said, listen, I've got some really good highly renowned people in the R&D, the growing area. But let's also build the sales team. Let's also, eventually, when it finally came about, prior to COVID, but COVID helped us, a telehealth platform. And I think one of the reasons that Canatrek did grow is we were producing from a facility in Queensland, but we were planning to do a very big grow here in regional Victoria. And that was partially what I raised a hell of a lot of capital for.
Mhm.
But we built a sales team from one person who then put on a sales manager who kind of was in Queensland. And then by the time I finished with the business, I think we had 14 or 15 what's called medical science liaisons. So these are trained, qualified sales reps, but they're more
Yeah.
than just a sales rep that come with their little bag and a couple of brochures. It's just a completely different beast the way things are done. So right place, right time. And again, just back to, I don't want to say there seems to be a common theme here. Tommy built a team of people, whether it was growers, whether it was finance people like myself that help raise from a pure financial, but then capital raising side, but then strategy people. And then all of a sudden we had to put on some legal people and risk people and quality people. And then my finance team grew from myself and one person. We had seven people in the end because we had an accounts receivable person, we had an payable person that they justified having unique, dedicated people for that. But then we had the management accountant that was trying to do more sophisticated stuff, especially as we put in an ERP system. So we grew, but we grew because that team, and it was progressive along the way.
Yeah. What was Tommy's role? So he's the founder and came up with the idea, and
Mm.
you're the sixth person come in the role, and then 140 staff when you left, and 14 sales professionals, with qualifications, which is an excellent strategy. And we've seen that in the medicine and pharmaceutical and life sciences, where you get people fresh out of university with the degrees that knowledge, and you teach them
Yes.
sales, and it's like go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But what was Tommy's role through that whole journey? Was he hands off? Was he CEO? Like,
He was CEO
yeah.
and he was extremely hands-on, but he was your true entrepreneur and visionary. He was always coming up with new ideas. And again, I think coming back to the common theme of team, he then was able to surround himself with a team of senior management and executive management that he'd come up with an idea, but then he'd put it out and listen to the views of the team. And whether it was we're thinking of opening up a pharmacy, or we're thinking of the telehealth platform, or we want to do this in the grow facility, he then was able to surround himself with well-trained people that he needed to listen to. And we grew as a company, and that was just that was wonderful. And again, wasn't without challenges along the way because you don't get everyone right, and you get some egos along the way, or just circumstances. And sometimes when there's a little bit more pressure on the sales or profitability, those people feel it and they react in a different way. It's human nature. It's what happens. So you've
Yeah.
got to
You,
support them.
you talk about skills matrix, but then you have the behavioral communication patterns matrix of people as well. Disc profiling can help, Myers-Briggs can
Yeah, yeah.
help, Strengths Finder can
Yes.
help.
Done
There's a
all
lot of
them.
different programs, but you should really make sure your executive team at least has done those so you can know
Agreed.
leverage.
And we did grow up to that where we were doing more profiling to make sure that as a team we were able to work together and know where our flaws were and be able to handle them rather than saying, why is that person reacting that way?
Yeah.
I think that was great. And again, kudos to the C-suite for, Tommy, myself, and others to kind of allow that to occur.
I know there's probably a myriad of things that happened or had to get right to get it to where you did. Oh, I remembered what the third thing was.
Oh yeah.
You're sitting at home, with your girls on the couch, and they're calling you the drug lord, and on the news, a police bus, confiscates $10 million in cannabis. And you just go, I sold 90 million last year.
Okay.
Bad,
We'll
sorry.
remember that when we're writing the script. Okay.
Um, Okay, so I wanted to ask, I know there's a myriad and a lot of things that had to get right to get to $90 million a year. What
Yes.
was, if you had to pick one thing though, that had the most significant impact on the growth and not teams, I'm talking about
Okay.
a
Yeah, sorry.
strategy, a tactic, or something that was just like got you firing.
It's a good question because it's really hard to lay it down. I'm going to be selfish in one sense to say that capital and cash flow, without having secured the level of equity that we did, without securing a debt facility from a tier one bank that allowed us to get some of the capital works going. But even more importantly, and this is a big word for any business, profit, we were profitable within our second year.
Yeah,
So that
right.
meant we were pretty much cash flow positive from our second year. That allowed us to grow. That allowed us to put on more people. That allowed us to put more energy into all of the programs and be able to build bigger storage facilities, or rather than having an outsourcing packaging business, or originally the original business was importing finished goods from overseas because we didn't have anything here in Australia. So all you could do was import flour, oil from overseas. Then it was, okay, we're going to bring it into Australia, but we're going to get other people in bulk, but then we're going to get people to package it. Well, you pay for that. That's contract packaging, contract manufacturing. Then we eventually, because we had the capital behind us and the cash behind us, we were able to build our own packaging facility, GMP, all of the sexy pharma stuff that you need with the air filtration systems and security systems and all the above. That allowed us, and that was a major impact on profitability because all of a sudden we were bringing it in-house and it was, cents in the dollar comparison to what we were paying the outside people. So from a financial side of things, I think having capital and cash to grow was critical to that success, to be able to get to 90 million and heavily profitable at the same time.
Mm,
So team's an enabler. Cash
yeah.
is an enabler, but yeah, you kind of mentioned other words like strategy and stuff like that. All of them, they go hand in hand. It's a big recipe. It's not one key ingredient. It's not just that little bit of oregano that you're putting in, or that bit of cardamom or something like that. It is a combination, but I can, from a CFO's perspective, I think having cash is king in any business.
I think Alex Retzlaff, who we interviewed as well, he said that it's the
Mhm.
life source. If you don't have it, you just stall. So if I could just summarize what I'm hearing, with Tommy and the
Mhm.
success that he was able to build, there's team as the enabler, there's the cash flow, but also coming up with new ideas and being able to listen to other people. So if we could take away from business owners who might be listening to this is, all right, you're thinking about going to the scale. Quick checklist. How are those three going? Do a health list checklist on
Yep,
those.
yep, yep. And
Um,
that's again one of the reasons I said to you up front, online and offline. That's why I love listening to podcasts that people like yourself put on, because you're always learning. You always hear other people's stories. Oh, that's why I'm struggling with that, or maybe I should think a bit more about that. That's why these tools we've got to just keep learning all the time.
yeah, I think people listening to this podcast and some of our others that have similar backgrounds is that responsible financial management is absolutely key. Because some people, when they're thinking about raising, funding, it's like, okay, popping champagne and so forth. But it's like, no,
Mhm.
no, no. It's even deeper responsibility
Oh,
now. It's.
absolutely.
So, okay.
Yeah.
You've overseen lots of companies from manufacturing medicinal cannabis,
Mhm.
consumer goods, food, tech, and so many more. What
Yep.
industries taught you the most painful lessons?
I don't think there's any one. I think the one that I've resonated to the most, which is turning your question around, is I love healthcare. I love the purpose behind healthcare and that you can see the benefit that's going to come from it. So when we had blue chip, I knew that our small chip that was on the bottom of a test tube vial or a blood bag was part of an entire system, but we were part of trying to make sure that that couple was having a baby from their sperm, their egg, their embryo, and not
Mhm.
someone else's, which sadly does occur. Or a clinical trial that's been done, which is, so rigid, and the importance of it is that we were ensuring that gold standard, that quality, that audit trail, which again comes back to my audit days. I can it's same wording, an audit trail and a supply chain of a particular product. Who's handled it? Do you know what temperature it was at? And that it wasn't left out and contravened because someone's paying 10, 20 grand for a stem cell therapy for whatever illness they've got. So I fell in love with healthcare, life sciences, biotech, and the people behind it because you're meeting such amazing people. You're meeting, whether it's surgeons or orthopedic surgeons that practice once a week, but the other 4 days of the week they're there developing new tools that they want to do to help other people going through surgery. When I fell into the medicinal cannabis world, which I would never have predicted, I literally got a call out of the blue. Um, and I knew that they needed help raising capital, and I, got on well with the board and got to know the team. But when you actually see the benefit and you actually get someone that thanks you, like saying, thank you for giving me the number of a doctor, because I didn't know where to call, or your telehealth platform, or someone else's telehealth platform. But thank you for just giving me some guidance. And you know what? I'm no longer suffering from pain. I can actually get out of bed in the morning. I can play with my grandchild. Like, that's like, okay, yeah, I produced a management report to the board that said we, gave this profitability, but getting that thanks, there's not many professions where you do get thanked. I think
Yeah.
doctors do because thank you for saving my life or helping with my knee. But from my accounting background, when you finish the audit, they're like, bye, don't want to see you for a year. Or thanks for that tax return, bye. Or
Thanks for my share dividends. Bye.
yeah, that's it. It's just now you obviously if you're doing business planning and strategy stuff and helping with grants and you're a bit more active, there are some positives of being an accountant, but there's not a huge amount of professions whether you're into roofing or plumbing and stuff like that. People don't generally want to see you, but when you get thanked by a real person who's they themselves or a family member has been helped, it makes it very rewarding. And we definitely, I think that was something that we built as kind of the culture at Canatrek and being involved in the medicinal cannabis industry. So I do like health, but it's highly regulated, as I want to say, so are most industries, whether you're in manufacturing or food, they're all regulated and they need to be. But so there's no one industry that I don't want to say wouldn't touch. I'm, advising a couple of businesses that are in the drone area. Again, what do I know about drones? I've seen the wonderful pictures they take on people's holidays, but now I'm
I'm
learning
an
about.
investor in two drone companies. One of them I'm devastated by, the share price over the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yes, yes, well, same.
What are you guys doing? But the other
Agreed.
one's doing okay. So
Oh,
I
that's
have
good.
greater
Yeah.
hope for the long-term vision
Yeah.
here.
So, again, I love learning about new industries. And I think something that maybe accounting taught me because when you're an accountant, you're moving from client to client. And at any one time, you can look on your floor and you've got these folders and files of, multiple files of that's the food company and that's the health company. Maybe that's what set me up to say, okay, Brett, it's nearly irrelevant. You don't need to be an expert in flooring or in furniture or in healthcare or in cannabis. I've been able to apply my financial skills
Mhm.
and winding right back, I think the business skills that I saw initially that taught me what is good business and how to deal with people that my dad and my grandfather, gave the great examples of in our family business. I think I've probably been able to apply that. So when the phone rings and someone says, Brett, I've got someone that I want to introduce you to that's developing a new nutrient for plants. It's not like, oh, I'm not an expert in nutrients and plants. I see what my darling wife does in our garden and the magic she does. But it's something that, okay, what are the business principles? What needs to be done here? Is it cash flow management? Is it team? Is it what aspect needs to be done here, and it's more than the financial. Again, I can make some damage in the commercial and strategy world, which I enjoy as well.
How important is it that people understand first principles when it comes to business? Because I love what you've done, by the way, and we'll talk about Rainbow
Thank you.
Enterprises in a moment.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
for some people that fall into business because they had an idea, or a family business,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
they've just worked their way up to C-suite from being a legacy employee for the last 10 years and got there, but may
Hmm.
not have the understanding of you come up from marketing lane. You might understand marketing first principles, but what
Yeah,
about operations,
yeah.
logistics, and leaderships and sales and so forth?
Listen, I think it's critical slash important, but depending on your role and function, I think what I've proven to myself is that I may not be a supply chain expert, but I've got enough base knowledge to understand, okay, we're trying to buy the right product at the right time at the right prices, and there are tools to help us manage that and do demand planning and procurement and storage and have visibility, and we're dealing with multiple sites. But then you've got to have the right team behind it that's able to execute that. So you don't have to be the one that does that all. Now, when you're starting your business, you are everything. You are every single role, function, feature. But ideally, you get to a point where you can start putting on, initially a chief operations officer or whatever you want to call them, an operations manager that will do many of those functions, but you work with them. So again, I think it's having an overarching understanding of many of those features. Same legal, but people spend many years doing their legal degree and then practicing and stuff like that. But I can at least talk the right language with the legal or the risks team and the governance team to be able to make sure that we're covering our bases. But I don't know everything, and I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to, say, Brett, okay, listen, yeah, your points, I hear your point, but, and it's like, okay, you're the expert here, mate. That's why we're paying you the big bucks, or that's why we've got, an outsourced firm to do it. So I think it's a real balance. You got to try and take egos out of this.
I was about to say, being able to step away and have ego out. And I want to say that, we've kind of skipped over a huge chunk of your career. We talked a lot about blue chip and then, Cannatrek, but you've had multiple CEO positions, C-suite positions in lots of companies in between.
Hmm.
Apologies that we haven't had time to
Oh,
really
we
talk.
touched a little bit on it. It's fine.
Um, but I guess I wanted to ask about what you're doing now, and because you have earned the right to be able to go in and transform any
Yeah.
business in any industry. So can you tell our audience about what you're doing now,
Yeah.
and what would the first 30 days look like in working with you?
So I finished up my last full-time gig as CFO just over a year ago. It was end of October last year, 2024. And obviously heading into the Christmas period, people are starting to down their tools. So even if you're starting to talk to recruitment firms and applying for jobs, it's getting to that period of time where, it's less likely that you're going to pick up something. And I needed to get my mindset right and understand what's next for me. So I had the path of, do I go for a permanent CEO, CFO type role? And I can and will do that with the right company and the right team. But I refired up my private consultancy, which allowed me to hang out my shingle and do something. And it was a new term to me, which is what's called a portfolio executive.
Mm.
And what a portfolio executive means is, at the end of the day, you're just a consultant advisor, but you're more than that. I'm offering myself as a fractional C-suite executive, whether it's CEO, CFO, even COO, but it's 1, 2, 3 days a week. And it might be someone that says, Brett, listen, we're still a startup company. We can't afford you full time, but we'd love to have you on board. We'd love to have you one day in the office where you're always there and we know that we can get you. And we'd like you available, whether it's 1 or 2 days during the week, kind of on call. And it might be like, can you come in for this meeting? Or can you attend a meeting online, which thankfully makes things a lot easier? Or can you review this presentation or this document that the marketing team or the legal team or the finance team, have a look at the monthly financials, something like that. Then the second component of that is as an advisor, where you're technically kind of on a monthly retainer, and you've either got a specific project, like I've been doing for the last 8 months for another business, helping them raise capital, but they're also tapping into my commercial and strategic brain, saying, "What were you thinking of?" Or "Do you know someone in the regulatory space?" Or "Do you know an insurance company that is comfortable with our industry?" Because not all insurance companies are comfortable with medicinal cannabis. Not all bankers are comfortable with medicinal cannabis. So you've really got to try and know who's willing to get involved. So that's as an advisor, and it can be as just a consultant. It might be a specific project. It might be, "Brett, we want to do market research on this industry." I literally met someone at the start of this week who's looking at entering the medicinal cannabis industry. Initially, they were talking about, we want to be a grower. We've got X million dollars. And I said, that's a good start, but don't take this the wrong way, but it's not going to get you that far. If you want to get into that area, but you've got to consider the competitive landscape because there's a lot of other people growing. Then he said, well, what about if we want to get involved in maybe importing product from overseas and opening up a dispensary? And I said, yep, that's definitely another way to get involved in it. But you've also got to be aware there are already the existing people that have already got a really good brand, and you've got
Network distribution.
it takes time. So with the knowledge that I've got in this industry, or whether it's in any other industry, I can help them do a bit of a strategic paper. And the third one was something that you mentioned at the start of the podcast and the questions was, I think I've now got the maturity and the experience as a board member. I've been a board member for private companies, for unlisted public companies. So they're not listed on the ASX, but they're big enough and got more than 50 shareholders. And obviously with my blue chip experience, we were listed, and I've been part of the listed space. So I do understand, enough to do some damage at the board table positively. And obviously with that financial, it's always there. I'm never going to be able to get rid of it, and I'm proud of it. And it's good because I always have a financial lens, but I've got that commercial strategic lens. So for the last 12 months, have been, doing some consulting work in a range of industries. Again, one, medicinal cannabis, a couple of businesses in the drone world, as we said before, which are very diverse, obviously, but many of the same business principles. And that's what I think it comes down to.
Absolutely. Business principles can be extended across all industries and businesses of all sizes.
Yeah.
And I love that you tapped into that. When we look at fractional, C-suites, but we're seeing fractional general managers, fractional sales directors, fractional marketing managers. And I think this is something that's going to be growing and growing and growing because,
I agree.
like the boards we said before, this board for this phase of your company. It's the same thing with, like, I may want to bring on a CMO, but I can't afford the CMO full time.
Yeah.
But I may be able to afford 20%. And that person might put on a little bit of a premium
Yeah.
and get four other and get a really nice check. But
Agree.
also we're getting the value of someone who's got so much experience as well. I love it. I think
I
it's
don't know
great.
how new it is. It's new. It's a new concept to me, newer concept to me, the fractional side of things. But I think the world is changing, and again, I think people are trying to be responsible and saying, rather than paying someone and it's just not the right time to bring them on, at least I've got access to them. And again, there are people. It's not only the technical skills; it's the networks that you've got. It's the whichever area you're in. So yeah, it's been an interesting 12 months, and it's allowed me to catch my breath. It's allowed me to have more time with my family, which is very, very important. I was able to support my wife in finishing her PhD, which she literally just had
Ah,
confirmed a couple of weeks ago. So absolutely, I'm on.
congratulations.
So she is a doctor. And yeah, so things happen for a reason, and we make decisions in life, or we have decisions made for us. That sometimes you grumble and say, "Oh my God, the sky's falling, and what are we going to do?" But yeah, things have happened for the reason for the last 12 months, and I'm pleased of it, and I'm excited about going forward and what I may be able to do, helping others, having that flexibility, looking after myself as well, which is I think health and wellness is something that we've always got to keep reminding ourselves about. So let's see what 2026 has in store.
Excellent. We used to have a tradition where we're doing the AI idea of the day or the week, but
Mhm.
I'm going to switch it up. In some of my most recent interviews, we decided to do kind of rapid fire questions where I ask you a question in one sentence or one word or as short as possible.
Okay.
Um, can you answer it? So, what's the one word every founder needs more of?
Cash.
What's the biggest killer of every early stage business?
Egos.
What's the first thing you fix in a broken company?
The team.
I knew you were going to say that teams and communication.
I had to think, but I was trying to not do financial, but no, the team. You
What
get the
is
right team and everything else falls in.
yeah, what yeah, absolutely. What instantly turns you off a pitch?
Egos and attitude.
Yeah. In one word, what does business success mean to you? Or one sentence. I'll give you a sentence.
Uh, Growth and value creation.
Nice. I thought you might have tagged on more time with family on the end.
Okay, well, that's a non-negotiable. That's always there.
Brett, you've been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. For those people that want to reach out to you or hear about other things you got coming up, how do they best do that?
Uh, I've got a mobile and an email address, which I can give online now, or they can contact you and you can pass it on. So I don't have a website. I don't have a shingle. It's my own private consultancy. So however it's best done, yeah.
And check it out on LinkedIn as well. There's
Absolutely. I'm there on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is just such a wonderful tool. So yeah, find me on Brett Schwartz's. Probably not too many Brett Schwartz's, and you can. It's and there's Schwarz. There's no T in the Schwartz.
that caught me out. So well done. Brett, thanks again for your time. Been
Thanks,
very
Sean.
generous and I do appreciate it. It's been lovely meeting you and spending time with you. And for the rest of you, thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Unicorn Ventures. All the best. Bye.
Thanks all.